Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the very first episode officially of the Sit Around the Fire podcast. I am once again joined by my co-host, Winston, who will be here with us today. And today, I'm super stoked to be. Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Sit Around the Fire. And today, this one feels different because today, we're celebrating something truly special. We're talking about 1 full year of conversations, healing, transformation, and community. When I look back at episode number 1 that you just heard a clip of, I can't even wrap my mind around everything it took to get in front of that mic and how it's all come to be where it is now. When I started this podcast, it really was just an idea, an inspiration, a hope that if we created space where people could sit together, first responders, healers, helpers, survivors, everyone really, we might start to mend some of these individual wounds that we do all carry. I didn't know exactly where it would go. I didn't know who would show up. And I just knew deep in my heart that the world needed conversations that mattered. And now, 1 year later, look where we've landed. We have sat with flight nurses, paramedics, firefighters, sheriff deputies, mental health professionals, everyday heroes who have opened themselves up with honesty, vulnerability, and courage. We've talked about trauma, transformation, purpose, stress, fear, resilience, all the things it means to remember and rediscover the truth about who you really are. But most importantly, we've built a community, a place where people don't have to pretend like you're fine, a place where people can just come and be with the stories and the connection. And this connection becomes the healing. So today's episode is a celebration of you, of us, of everyone who's ever pulled up a seat to the fire. And to honor this milestone, I have collaborated and collected some juicy clips from some of the past episodes. And I think you're going to enjoy the journey with me as we reflect on where we've been, where we are going, and how this journey has come to be. Because this very much is not an ending. It's merely a checkpoint. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around for the next season. So thank you for being here. Now, you know the drill. Let's sit around the fire. In episode number 2, we really did kick it off with a bang. Mike Major took the time to open up his heart and share his story, which really this episode was incredibly impactful to anyone who listened to it. But I hope that you enjoy this clip from episode number 2, Mike Major.
Very tight family, very, very close. So the good and the bad of that is you grow up in a close family, but then when you have a loss, it's so much deeper, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And as you know, as first responders, we're kind of trained to not really face emotions and feelings head on. We're taught from day one that if you allow yourself to feel, you won't survive in the profession. Mm-hmm. And there are actually comments from older employees that will say, if you have emotions, if you take things on, you're not cut out for the job. Mm-hmm. So then that adds another stressor. So, like I said, growing up in a very tight family, having those traditional Midwestern, I guess you could call them values, and then having a career that deals with loss and learning the fragility of life, seeing the everyday stressors, seeing how someone's life changes in an instant. seeing things that, like you said in your last podcast, that you shouldn't see, but you do and you repress it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say my biggest challenge was probably that on the job for 23 years, and I got a lot of reps. I got a lot of reps in those 23 years. And I would say my biggest challenge was it took so much to deal with all of that, with the repression and the avoidance and the mental trauma, that when I would come home or when I'd be off duty, any little request was magnified, because now you're just giving of yourself, giving of yourself, neglecting yourself, giving of yourself, neglecting yourself. And then when you're off, which you never are,
Mm-hmm.
then you come home and every little request is so magnified.
Right.
So it's funny because in your last episode, you talked about how you go around and say, well, I don't think about that, or it doesn't bother me. The job doesn't bother, this doesn't bother me, or that doesn't bother me. And then you give the symptoms, you're like, wait a minute, I have every one of those symptoms. I have a deep need and desire to isolate, or I have this burning anger that just never, ever subsides.
Right.
Or I have this loneliness feeling or this emptiness feeling. And I got to the point where every single morning, it was easier on the days that I had to work because my alarm would go off. I'd roll out of bed like a robot, hit the snooze, go to the bathroom, grab my coffee, grab my stuff, go out the door, boom. But on the days where I didn't have to get up, I would lie there for 30, 40 minutes trying to figure out a reason to get up. And obviously, I always came up with a reason because I'm sitting here. But I would every morning I would go through this process of, why bother? Why should I get up? And then every now and then I'd have a reason. Say maybe the grandchildren would pop into my head, or my legacy. Is this how you want to go out? Really? Or things, whatever it was. But
Yeah.
it was always something. But I would force myself to get up. And I would always think of the rocket ship, that when it blasts off, how much force it takes for it to lift off and go up into gravity. And I always felt like that, getting out of bed. Like I'm just fighting through this force just to get up and get moving. And I was listening to a podcast one time, and the guy said, the worst feeling you could ever have is feeling overwhelmed. And that resonated with me, because I think when you're that overwhelmed, your brain is so full. You mentioned the bucket last time, and I used to walk around the firehouse saying, they're like, Major, are you really leaving? And I would say over and over, my bucket's full. My bucket is full. There's no emptying it out. I could have something where maybe you could take a ladle of water out, but it's overflowing. It's full. And once it's full, you have to do something.
Right.
And continuing doing what you're doing is not the way to empty your bucket.
No. Plan A harder does not work.
No. So when your bucket is full and your mind is full, and then it's closed off and it's full of all this crap. And when it's full of all this crap, you can't take on new information. In my opinion, you can go to traditional therapy. You can talk and talk and talk, but if your mind is full of crap, it cannot take on any new information.
In episode number 5, Pete DePrez opens up about his darkness and his story that ultimately led him into an incredible transformation in which he is now showing up to serve others. He's on a mission to help end the suffering.
Story took the exact trajectory that most people telling this story recount. I started drinking just to be able to sleep for short periods of time, which just exacerbates all of those symptoms the next day. Eventually got voluntold to go seek medical help with the issues. So I did what most people would do, and I went to my general practitioner and explained, I can't sleep. I'm starting to feel anxious. I'm describing the symptoms, and he very quickly said, well, you're exhibiting signs of a panic disorder, which is not unusual for anybody in your line of work. The things that you witness and deal with on a daily basis are very overwhelming. I'm going to give you some medications that should help. And I asked, how long will I take those medications? And I remember the doc scoffing at me and saying, you'll take those indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't sound like a solution to me, and was probably the first time that I started asking myself and the people around me, like, what is there's a mechanical error taking place within my brain. And I want to understand what that mechanical error is. But I also wanted to continue working. So I walk out of the office with a prescription for Lexapro, which is an antidepressant, and Xanax. And the Lexapro said, take one tablet daily. And the Xanax said, take one daily or as needed. And I just read the as needed part. So it wasn't unusual for me to take 3-4 Xanax throughout the course of a shift. And that quickly, I was someplace, somebody saw me take one, asked what it was. I told them, it's prescription. And we quickly came to the conclusion that carrying a weapon on Xanax was probably not a good idea. So at that point, I went on to FMLA to try to figure out the problem, and spent 4 months. I was in a heavy 3-month period where I knew every day that I woke up, I was going to have to talk myself out of taking my own life at some point. So really dark period that was unlike anything I could have fathomed, and changed my entire opinion about suicide, which I think is something, our community has to respond to so many suicides on a regular basis that we develop this prejudice about it and judgment about the act of suicide as being this horribly selfish act. And after having that experience, it changed my sentiment on it substantially. Thankfully, I was able to find a way through that, and through a number of different modalities that we can get into later, found a ton of resolve. And so now I'm focused on trying to help other veterans and first responders find it to this place of healing and a better life. And that kind of gets us to this place, which is fascinating to consider, because I'm constantly, as I'm sure you are, having conversations with first responders. In the second the topic turns to mental health, the shutdown that comes from guys and girls is astounding to me.
Episode number 6, The Detiros. What a classic. These two are just two amazing, incredible people. Retired firefighter, retired flight attendant, talking about all things marriage and harmony within this balance of raising kids and doing the thing as first responders and people with very non-traditional schedules. They talk about retirement and what that has been like for them, as well as things that they think is important for people to talk about before they do.
I do still really like him after 40 years.
I mean, that's a commitment, so
It is.
It is. But it has gotten better over 40 years. It hasn't plateaued. I still think we still have a long way to go. We still have so much more we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear more about. I love talking about conflict, obviously, because I hear a lot about it when people come to see me, and many people struggle with how to communicate within a relationship. So tell me about some of the goods and the bads of what you guys have experienced in communication and conflict.
I think, if you don't,
No, go
um,
ahead.
I think a lot of it, and this is going back to being a firefighter, is a lot of the guys are stressed at work. And back in the day, you didn't dare say anything because then you were labeled as, weak or something. And I think they would bring that home and then they wouldn't talk to their spouse. And I think there was a lot of problems at home because of that. But I wasn't afraid to come home and talk to Leanne without including specifics, if I couldn't. But that was good because then you have someone to talk to, and that's what you need to do. You need to be open with your spouse, and that's where you get it off your chest. And it does not that it's going to go away, but at least you have someone to talk to, and you don't just come home and keep it all balled up, and then that's just not a good ending. So I think some of our conflicts that we had, a lot of them are just life, just things in life, money or whatever. And it's never perfect, like I said, but if you talk and you listen to each other, you don't always agree, which is fine because that's just the way it is.
Boring.
Yeah, but you have to talk and you have to more importantly, you have to listen.
You have to listen.
And you do have to do that. That goes with anything, and in more so in relationships. Otherwise, they won't last.
We're basically team Detero. We've always been a team. And no matter what it is we're doing, if it's taking care of the kids or working on a house project or figuring out which bills to pay or this move was huge. This was a very big, stressful thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
We both felt like we were in moving hell.
Mm.
And it was a real, I think it was really not a challenge for us, but it really, it showed us who we really are. Because it was tough. It was hard. 35 years we were in that house. And we did that entire move basically by ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was a huge test.
It was a huge test, yeah.
That I could see being a conflict for people. And for us, it was a struggle. It was tough at times, but we got through it. We just kept going, and like I said, you got to stay open, listen, and talk, and otherwise it would never happen. So
I'll tell you the biggest struggle for me when he retired.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. It was hard. I was used to my 2 days. You kind of get used to those 2 days to yourself. And him too. I think he had his 2 days. And then when you come home, and we had the perfect storm. When I was a flight attendant, I would be gone and he'd be by himself and he would have to take care of the kids or whatever. And he'd have to take care of whatever needed to be taken care of. And then when he was gone, I'd have to do the same. Yeah. And I think that made us stronger as a couple. Sure. But then when he retired, we were 24/7 together. I was like, oh boy, I have to give up my remote control. I have to give up the remote and a lot of other things.
So I put another TV in the house, so we have 2 TVs. No,
it was an adjustment. I wouldn't say it was a conflict. Yeah. It was a huge adjustment, and I do think people need to think about that really hard. Not to not retire, but to plan your retirement and what you're going to do, because a firefighter retiring is way different than anybody else retiring. They're home a lot, but they're home, but they never used to be at home. Everybody else comes home every night for dinner, and then they retire and they move on. With a firefighter, it's way different. And it's something that I don't think we really discussed as much as I think we should have. That's one thing. I don't regret it because we worked through it, but it was hard. It was a struggle. I kind of felt like him home all the time, but I feel like it was almost like not a divorce, but a death. It was almost like a death because I felt like I lost the firefighter family, because they're so much a part of our family. And now we feel so disconnected. Yeah. That's been a little hard for us.
On episode number 9, I had the honor of talking to the one and only Pam Howes, flight nurse and paramedic who has been in the field for an incredibly long amount of time. She talks about all the things that causes the amazingness of working in EMS, including relationships, and she highlights the legacy she has moving forward with both of her kids becoming first responders.
Actually, it was so great watching his interview because they had to put together a PowerPoint, and just the last page of it was like, pay it forward, pay it backwards, pay it. And I was just like, holy cow, like you pulled all that from me. Like,
wow.
It just, you never know when you're making a difference, right? And he's like, I want to give back to my community that served me so well. And I want to stay local. And he's like, my folks taught me all these important rules. And I'm like, holy cow, at 20 years old, you're so put together. How are you, my child?
Wow.
But it's just like, it makes me cry, like their journeys. I look back on our journeys and I'm like, I'm in this role today because my really good friend said, do you want to go to EMT school? I had no idea that it would past this. My husband's a dispatcher. Both of my kids got in the industry, and here I am 30 years later, still the job absolutely has its challenges, but it's just taught me so much and given me so much that I'm honestly forever grateful for that one conversation that you just never know the difference that you make or the things that you say, how important they are.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I agree. I think you've got deep EMS roots in your family.
For somebody who was like, I didn't even know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I was a travel agent and I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like, I wanted to wear heels and a skirt to work every day and be some kind of a business associate or something. And I was like, I was a secretary for 2 weeks. And I was like, make your own coffee. This job is not for me.
Wow. That's so awesome. Yeah. That's so very cool.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, you threw out something that I thought was really catching, was EMS is more than a job. What does that actually mean to you?
It's so the people that we get to meet, like the relationships you carry forever. You meet people, it sounds probably super cliche, but you meet people in the worst days and the worst times of their life. And I haven't personally had situations like that. I guess that's not terribly true. Andy, my son, was in 2 car accidents that were pretty significant and during COVID. And so you fall back on those relationships. Like one of the medics, he got hit head on at one of our big highways up here. And I was working in the ICU in COVID. And my husband called me, actually dispatch called me and said, we're sending a helicopter to your son's accident. And I was like, time out. What are you talking about? Like, my heart sunk. I looked around. I'm like, I know none of you people. We're all covered up in masks and PPE. And one of their medics texted me a picture at that moment. And he said, I know you are getting wind of this and your son is fine. Oh. And I was just like, holy crap. Okay. But those relationships are so important. And that to me is what's given back the most. Like I try to go to work with a good attitude and learn as much as I can and be the best provider that I can be. But at the end of the day, it's that ability to relate to people on their level. And the people in this industry have just taught me so much and just shown me roots that I didn't. To go back when I was my first day as an EMT, like I probably should have been fired probably like first year taking care of people. I remember a code and my poor partner's in the back doing CPR and he's like, are you going to this hospital? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, turn around and go the other way.
Oh, God.
I'm like, okay, I'm going the right way. And he's like, nope, you're still going the wrong way. I'm like, oh boy. Like, I don't know if this patient's going to live or not, but maybe I'll get you to the hospital. So it's just, there's so much, we thrive in the unknown. And that's a very unusual place for people to survive. Like, we don't know what the day is going to bring. And so we have to adapt, and every day is adapting and growing and learning and being constantly uncomfortable. And, they teach you the book stuff, but that only takes you so far, and so I just love, like, the relationships are just deep. I keep track of people from many, many years ago and I still see them and I still talk to them. And and like, even for you, Ashley, like, I'm so proud of your journey. We met not in EMS, and I'm like, I want to watch you and support you. And it's just it comes full circle, in the strangest ways and the neatest ways. And you meet a lot of great people, and you get to be partners with a lot of great people. And it's, you spend your life with, people who aren't your family, but they become your family.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the relationships really are everything in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. If we didn't have those, like, I don't think any of us would work here. Like, that's what keeps us, there's so much gross and yucky, but then there's so much great to celebrate too. And it's fun to have the opportunity to celebrate the good with somebody and work through the bad with that same somebody.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think, or what do you wish somebody knew about your job that isn't necessarily common knowledge?
I have to say, I was just thinking about this last night, and I am so proud of my kids because I didn't teach them this, but they have exquisite boundaries. And I mean that. Like, April's like, I have 3 days off, and I'm not checking my email. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not even being tempted by the opportunity to work. And for me, looking back, it was like every day you push through and you do what you need to do. And I watch my kids now, and I'm like, I promise you, I didn't teach you that. They figured it out on their own, or they watched me, like, not take time for myself and not do those things. And I just think that's so important, and we underestimate it. And I can see that super clearly now that I watch my kids. Like, my daughter's like, I'm going to go get my hair cut and I'm going to go hang out with my friends. And my son played pond hockey this weekend. And I'm like, you can't teach people that. But I think my career's been wonderful and I love it. I wouldn't change it. But I think that will carry them to be more successful and just deal differently than I think we deal with some of the situations that are presented to us. And 30 years ago, actually, we didn't talk about any of this. It was like, you just put your hat on and went to work, and you wore the badge and you smiled at the end of the day and went home. They didn't teach us, like, go out and sit down and have a cup of coffee and go for a hike in the mountains. It was like, hey, when can you come back to work? We need you back here. We're short staffed. There's a nursing home call that needs to happen. And so I think the trajectory is shifting, and I'm so grateful to have my kids see that shift in the trajectory and focus on themselves. At least this job will take everything you give it. So you have to be mindful of, I'm not going to give it everything I have, because at the end of the day, I still have to have something left for me.
Episode 14 was one of my most favorite. I had the opportunity to talk with Melissa Alvarez, a firefighter wife who is out there doing all the things. And by the way, makes an incredible batch of salsa, which if you're in the area, you got to check it out. It's quite amazing. But she is also showing up for other firewives and for community in general like no other. Hope you enjoy this tearjerker of an episode, number 14. So I want to kick off the conversation with kind of the drive home point of, if you could give our listeners one message about being the spouse of a firefighter, what would that be?
That's so loaded. It's so many things. Like, we are holding it down at home. Oh, I want to cry.
That's okay. That's totally fine.
So heavy, like, we carry a lot. And I don't think a lot of people see it, which is fine. It happens. I feel like in the oil field, they have this, like, oil field moms and police moms, and we're all just holding it down in different ways. And I want everybody to know that they're seen. And that was my whole point of the kind of coming on Instagram and, like, doing all this and just being more present and showing, like, we can all support each other in different ways. Yeah. And being a firewife mom has shown me that I'm capable of doing just that. It sounds so easy to do, but it's kind of hard to do too.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. As you hear you talk, I get like my stomach like lights up in warmth and like I get chills because I know I can see like how passionate and how emotional it is for you. And I think this is going to be so impactful for people to hear a totally different side of it. And even for maybe those people who are serving on the front lines to hear a different perspective too. Because it's
Yeah,
really,
for sure. And just like by coming on and doing things little here and there, like I see the value in it. Like the moms coming, privately to my messages or my DMs and just wanting to do something either locally with our families. And I'm just so proud of everybody for kind of stepping up and stepping out of their comfort zone. And that's kind of like what I did. You kind of step out of motherhood, like the depth of motherhood, and you're like, what do I do now? Do I go back to work? Or maybe you already are working and you need something else that just fills your cup. And so I think coming on there too, that's what I was trying to find. Like, and the Dear Chiefs podcast, like they showed me that I'm capable. I'm capable of so much more than just being, and I don't want to say just being a mom. Like that's a lot. That's so much, especially holding down the schedule and the life of a firefighter and everything we have to do with our kids alone. So, yeah.
incredible opportunity in episode number 16. I had the enlightening conversation with Mr. Egan de los Cabos out in sunny California. He gave us an incredible picture of what his story and his journey has been like, as well as how he tapped into resources and finally got answers that he needed. But the biggest part of his story was he never gave up. Now he's using his story to impact and serve other brothers and sisters within his line of work.
And then it kind of reached a breaking point. So my son, he was now he's about 5 now, and it was my girlfriend at the time. We're living together. Who's now my wife. But anyways, he was sitting on top of a bar stool. We were getting ready for dinner, and then he fell off this bar stool. And kids fall. Your nieces, nephews, you got kids, they fall down usually completely fine. But when he fell off of this bar stool, I thought he was dying in front of me. It was the weirdest thing. I literally just rushed over to him, picked him up, and started crying inconsolably. I knew my reaction was over the top. I knew it was unreasonable, but I couldn't change that fact at all. It was like a physiological thing that came over me. And that's what PTSD is, as we know now. I didn't know it at the time. All I knew is that I felt completely out of control of my own body, and I can't live like this. Even my girlfriend at the time looked at me when I'm holding him crying. She's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I have no idea, but I just can't live like this anymore." So I had to think about it again, and I revisited therapy. And so, but when I say therapy, I already had a bad experience, right? I went through my insurance, found a therapist to me who wasn't worth a damn. So I went online and kind of found a local like conglomerate that had, and I live in a small town, so I had to find somebody that was closer, in my opinion, than I thought that was. And then I'm like, oh, trauma. I'm like, well, that sounds what I'm looking for. So I just found a therapist. Shot in the dark, and it worked out great. But I didn't use my insurance. I paid cash. I burned the receipt. I didn't want anyone to know. And that's the other thing. So I'm going through this whole journey of my physical health breaking down. I can't work some days. And I'm having trouble sleeping, anxiety, all this stuff. And did I tell my captain? No. Did I tell my chief? No. Did I tell anyone? I didn't tell anyone. I was scared shitless. I thought I would lose my job. I thought I wouldn't be able to provide for my family. I didn't know what my life would look like. I had no idea. I have no other skills. I have this, I'm firefighter and paramedic, and that's it. That's all I got. So I was scared for lots of reasons. Number one, my health and my family. And then secondary, how would I provide or move on from this? And what would my life look like? So lots of fear surrounding this. So anyways, I made this appointment, found this therapist. And within about 20, 30 minutes of talking to me. And she told me, she's like, you got PTSD. And I'm like, wait, I'm like, I've heard of it, but isn't that for like military and people who have been to war and see really bad stuff? Like I was in an accident and I'm physically fine. Like no one died. And she's like, it doesn't matter. So that's not how your brain works. And then you're a first responder. So you've seen a lot of really bad stuff along the way, and that doesn't help. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's at least. So when I walked out of that office for the first time in several years, I finally had an answer to what my body was experiencing and what I felt in my gut that was tied to what was going on. So I finally had like a little bit of that weight that I was carrying around lifted off after walking out of that. So at least I had a direction. I didn't know what things would look like, but at least I had somebody who could put some pieces together for me and that could move on.
Whew, okay. Episode 19 with Mr. Steve Orr. This one ended up being one of our most popular episodes. I think, honestly, it really surprised me. Probably surprised Steve as well, but talk about incredible vulnerability, transparency, and honesty in sharing his story. It is so amazing to hear him talk about it, where he was, where he's come from, the lessons that he's learned, and truly how he's on a mission to pay it forward.
I mean, it just wasn't a healthy environment, I'll just say. And so slowly but surely, like I said, I was always someone that, not always, I was generally someone that was very patient and compassionate with patients. I think that was one of my strengths. I don't know. I think clinically I was good, really good, pretty good, but that wasn't necessarily my total strength, but it was how I cared for people.
Yeah.
And it turns out when you continue to care and give, and like apparently there's something called compassion fatigue. And so I remember specifically one call that I was on where it was a opiate overdose, clearly, and we, administered Narcan and essentially, saved this person's life. And then we were walking him out to the ambulance, and he said something like, "Oh, I didn't use anything. I was just sleeping or whatever." And for some reason, I just snapped. And I remember just getting in his face and being like, "Listen, motherfucker, we just saved your life," and blah, blah, blah. And, which was very much out of character for me. And actually someone, I was on the ambulance, and someone on the engine who I'd known for, a long time, called me out on it. And I was like, "Dude, what's up? That's not like you." And that, I took note of that. And I believe that was the time I reached out to EAP, because we have an EAP program in place. And I remember meeting with this therapist, and he said something about, it would say, "I think you have PTSD." And I remember being really surprised to hear that, because even at that point, which I think was probably around 2010 or so, maybe 2012, I really thought that PTSD was something that only combat veterans were, susceptible to. I mean, which is kind of interesting that, even at that point. So, and he talked about, "Yeah, man, your nervous system is, you have a nervous system injury." And I just started learning a little bit about PTSD, and started to become aware that something was not right, and my behavior was the sign that I was irritable too. I remember another time, so this must have been 2012, because my son was born in 2011. And my wife and I were getting him, into his pajamas or whatever. He's still young enough. We, had to And you know how it is with the little kid, and you know, he's squirming, and you know, four hands are trying to, and I literally felt like I was on a call where I was like barking orders to her, or like, you're not doing it right, or just something. I can't remember. I was just like super irritable and angry, and it felt like an emergency is what I'm trying to say. And I was like, holy shit, if getting my son into his pajamas is feeling like an emergency, and I'm stressed out and barking orders and all that, like, again, another sign. My wife is like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and then she's a super compassionate, caring person. She's a mental health provider, but she also was like, dude, like, something's wrong, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, those were just a couple of the, I guess we'll call them signs or moments when I realized that, something's not right. But unfortunately, I was able to reach out and, get some help. And I'll add that I've been treated for depression for a long time. So I was already open to therapy and mental health care. And so perhaps it wasn't as hard for me as it might be for others to reach out, because that was something I already, had a practice. I was more comfortable with that. I think it was more, you don't unwind all these years of trauma and stress in a moment, I guess is the other thing I'll say, which I'm sure we'll get more into.
Episode number 21 was a blast. I got to sit down with Chef Calvin, who is on this movement to make cooking a lot easier. He gave us some incredible insights on making changes within our own diets that can help us, addressing stress and inflammation, as well as the importance with community and meals, and what being in the kitchen and being around the table means to all of us. Such a blast in this episode. We had a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy.
So everything really is about making small steps in the right direction, right? So, they didn't build Rome overnight. It's really about like just learning to make small, exchanges, small switches, right? Maybe it's not getting the large, extra large French fries. Maybe it's getting the small French fries, right? It may be switching from French fries, fried French fries, to maybe sweet potato fries. Do them in the air fryer instead of frying them again, right? Making your own French fries, right? Because, potatoes are a good source of potassium. It's just a matter of, once they get coated and all those different things, it's just making all those small directions and the small steps in the right direction. And, my wife teases me now because we lived in California at one point, and we lived in Southern California, and she teases me because I drink matcha now. She calls me matcha man. And I'm always in my tofu and all the different things. But you'll be surprised what you can do with some tofu. I mean, texture wise, and it takes on almost any flavor. So if you want a great pasta dish and your favorite marinara sauce, a little chopped tofu goes a long way, and some Tuscan experience. Life is good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. I myself have recently started to move towards more plant-based, which if I would have told this to myself like 5 years ago or more, I would have been like, you're crazy.
Right.
How can you do that? But learning to explore some of these different things of, tofu and tempeh and like edamame pastas, and like it really is just amazing. You're not missing out on without having that big piece of meat or whatever it is. You really do feel good if you do it right.
And that's the thing is like my inflammation has went down. I sleep better. you have better, your attitude is better, your outlook on life if you're not weighed down, right? If you're not in pain. And it's really amazing. I work with I'm a part of this program called Plant Power. It's one of the doctors from University of Miami. She created It's a vegan program. It's a clinical study where they take families from underserved communities and they teach them the vegan lifestyle. And I think that we go into it knowing that they may not, change fully to a fully, vegan plant-based lifestyle. But boy, if you could take down 50%, reduce 50% of their cholesterol or 50% of the sodium that they take in, or just how their body digests and processes, animal protein, it's a win.
Totally.
And just to get them to think differently, because one of the things that I learned with CKD is it's actually hard on your body to process animal protein.
Mm-hmm.
So, the more plant-based that you can do, longer term, your organs and all these little nuances of your body that you don't necessarily know about, it's all intertwined and interconnected.
In episode 22, I got connected with an incredible human being who was out there using her voice and using advocacy to support a community of folks who are on the spectrum or have autism, and how they can be supported by first responders, and giving us tactics and tools and tips and training on how to handle these calls differently, or things that we can look out for where we can recognize this as what it is and not necessarily about what we might think it is. It was a really cool, enlightening episode that I walked away with so much information and asked her a lot of questions as well. But this was incredibly informative, and I hope that a lot of people grasped on to the importance of needing to be aware of how we can best show up for our communities. It makes me laugh inside hearing the calm down part, because that was always one of my, actually it's not that nice, but one of my favorite things of watching new firefighters come through or anything is you trying to use the calm down phrase, and it doesn't work on anybody. It doesn't matter. You say calm down and you're like, no, actually, it just does, it escalates things. So
honestly, when my husband says that to me, calm down, it doesn't work at all.
No, you're like, game on, let's go. I'm ready. No, it doesn't work. Yeah, we should just get it out of our vocabulary because it doesn't work. Or asking.
I think it's really important to also acknowledge the expertise of the family that's supporting the individual, saying you know the best what usually works. Mm-hmm. Parents are used to judgment from so many places, from the cashier at the supermarket, right? Child's having a meltdown and the cashier is giving advice. The grandparents, the friends, everybody, the internet, everybody's got 2 cents to pour some type of judgment onto parents who are working really hard to do their best. Mm-hmm. So I think of really avoiding judgment and saying, what's wrong with him, or what did you do, or weren't you watching him? You found a lost child, or weren't you watching? Who was watching him? It really doesn't do anyone any good to approach things from that matter. From that perspective. So yeah, I think that phrasing things so that you have people wanting to help versus going on the defensive is important.
Episode 23, I had the great honor of talking to Margot Amy, who is the creator of True Self Films. And she is on a mission to turn her grief and loss into a powerhouse for giving people an opportunity to share stories, to resonate and connect together, but most of all to support underserved communities, whether it's women or minorities or other groups of people she is looking to give a voice. She's a very powerful an impactful story, and I hope you enjoy this clip from episode number 23.
Fortunately for me, I had a very strong mother, and she never actually, she did suppress a lot. She never actually did show a lot of her grief. So I grew up thinking, okay, you don't show that, you do suppress that, and you just show strength, and that's all you can show. And so when all of the loss happened for me, when I lost the family members, I just still tried to stay stoic and keep moving forward. But it was difficult. And I did run into a wall at one point, and I just broke down. And then I realized, okay, I can't do this by myself.
The Sit Around the Fire podcast truly has been an extension of my heart and my mission to serve others and to really end this epidemic of suffering. It has given me the coolest platform and opportunity to share so many things about what I've learned or what my journey has been like, or lessons and trials and tribulations, celebrations, amazing moments, all of the things. So I want to thank you also for this opportunity of allowing me to show up in your life and listening to everything that we've put together on this podcast. It has been so special. Now you may be asking yourself, what does this look like moving forward? Well, holy cow, get ready, because we have some amazing guests that are coming up on future episodes. It continues to be the coolest connection, and just to give you a little glimpse, check out these clips of future episodes coming up.
That one message is, I'm going to tell you a whole story, and it sounds unbelievable. There are receipts for everything that I'm about to say. There's court records, there's medical records, there's a video trail. So for example, a lot of people are going to hear about the suicide and things like that. But at one point in time, I'm sure I was in dementia. I was lost in my own community. I was cloudy it started with random days of cloudiness to turn into random days of clarity. And I'm back, man. And I got back because of Joe. Of all people in the world, Joe Namath saved my life. And sometimes you say his name, I just still get choked up. But yeah, listen to the details because they affect most of our families.
I've had the opportunity to see a lot of the different facets of the fire service, particularly when it comes to health and wellness, to see, when you look at it from a different perspective of somebody that's been on the truck the entire time, you start to see different angles. It's like, maybe we can do this a little better. Maybe we can do that a little better. And in 2017, me and another firefighter started a nonprofit, the North Carolina Firefighter Cancer Alliance. And now it's the North Carolina Firefighter Cancer Wellness Alliance. Long story. I'm sure we'll get into that. But that grew out of us realizing that cancer in the fire service was if not the number one killer, right up there with cardiac. We realized that, hey, this is a problem. And this is when nobody would talk about it. Cancer never got mentioned. I went and taught our program at departments before, where the chief at the volunteer department was like, I'm going to bed. I ain't got time for this.
Since we're talking about, we kind of we moved our way into this before we started the interview, is if you think that you are 100% healthy, you're wrong.
We have this idea that I don't know, I don't want to admit that there's a problem. And really what a good coach or therapist will do is show you what you can't see. And so because we are in our relationships, we're in a dynamic, I always say you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle. And so what a good coach is going to help you do is just see the dynamic, your impact on your partner that you can't see because you're in it, you're living it. And so, I would say if you want things to be better, then have the courage and commitment to reach out.
Thank you so much for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to spread value and resources. And I come from a home of first responders. My grandfather was a fire captain, and my father was a police officer for 25 years. And then, I served in the military, and a lot of people in my family in general, both my younger sisters, are military. So I think that communities are very interconnected. A lot of first responders are former military or adjacent, and a lot of them also had the same issues when it comes to suicide, to addiction, to sleep health, and to a lot of the mental health issues that go on. So I think it's really important that we help serve one another within those two communities.
As we close out this 1-year celebration, I really just want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up, for listening, for growing together with me, and for being part of this community that has become so much more than just a podcast. A year ago, this was just a dream, a vision that I had, a hope that if we could create a space for real conversations, people would feel less alone and people could begin to heal and transform their lives. And today, sitting here with you, with all our guests, and with this incredible community, I'm truly reminded that healing happens in connection, and that the fire we sit around burns brighter because of every single one of you. If this episode resonated with you, if this podcast has made you think, reflect, or feel a little less isolated, or maybe even a little more understood, I'd love for you to help us to continue to grow. Take a moment to like the episode, subscribe to the show, and share it with someone who might need it. Your support helps reach so many people. Your support helps keep the conversation moving forward. And your presence here week after week is what keeps this mission alive. So thank you again for one incredible year. Here's to the stories we've told, the ones we're still living, and all the ones that are yet to come. Until next time, signing off as your host, Ashley Dillard. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and as always, thank you for sitting around the fire.